Alright, folks. First things first. Do you like models? Of course you do. You're watching this channel. Of course you like models. Then you will love our friends over at Minimaker. Before Games Workshop came out with their decent-looking Space Wolf models. Where's my camera? Probably helps I've got my camera on. God, I always forget to do this. I always forget to put my camera on. There we go. Right. Let's do some of your hot takes, shall we? Because I asked you the other day how you would build 11th edition. And in doing so, a lot of you got in touch, and a lot more than I thought would get in touch, actually. Because 11th edition is a big thing that is heading into... Hello, yeah, I'm here. 11th edition is one of the big things that we're heading into over the next few years. So it's going to become more and more pertinent that we start talking about this and getting down what we actually want from 40k 11th edition going forwards, alright? Let's jump in to what you guys had to say with Big Jay-Z first. And our prompt, of course, was... How would you change or build Warhammer 40,000 11th edition? Alright. So, Big Jay-Z says, as a Thousand Suns player, the main thing I want back is psychic powers. 11th doesn't necessarily need a dedicated psychic phase, but I want to choose what powers each of my sorcerers get and roll to cast and deny. So you want a psychic phase. That's what the psychic phase is. This is you're selecting your psychic powers and you're rolling to cast and deny. Anyway, the powers can be used in different phases, buffs in the command phase, smites in the shooting phase, etc. Psychic powers need to feel unique again. I agree with you there, and I think the onus, what Games Workshop are trying to do, is they're trying to limit down the amount of brain power required to play a psychic-heavy army. But I think the onus on psychic powers should be on the psychic player, right? So if you've got Witchfire attacks, they go in the shooting phase. If you've got buffing, spells, they go in the command phase, things like that. You should know which of your spells falls into which category and when it can be used. That's up to you. That's your responsibility. So I would agree with this. Yeah, make it complicated to do, from the standpoint of, you need to remember what phases certain spells go into, certain powers go into, and when to use them properly. But in terms of everything else, like if you've got no psychers, then it's not a problem, is it? I would absolutely agree with that, yeah. Ralphie May says, go back to 3rd through 7th edition style of rules, but don't add crazy stuff like formations. Most importantly, get rid of stratagems. If a particular army would have stratagems as their faction mechanic, maybe that would work, but no more widespread stratagems. That got a lot of likes. Okay, I remember Imperial Guard being one of those factions that had stratagems. Like quite a lot, They were called orders back in the day, and essentially they were stratagems. That's how they worked, right? You would fire them off at certain times, and be able to make your army do different things. And it was a really cool faction mechanic. That being across the board is kind of lame, and I kind of do understand that. Yes, with you. Stratagems do give people. They do simplify one of the core aspects of the game that I quite like. And that's doing cool stuff, right? Having your army do cool thematic stuff. A lot of the times back in previous 40k editions, that used to be buried in the rules of the codex, right? All of that cool inner working mechanics of your faction used to be buried. Now it's front and center. Here is your army rule, and here are 6 to 10 stratagems that you can use. I would narrow down the stratagems and create more army rules. I would say you can select one of these 3 army rules, right? So if you're playing Eldar, are you playing heavy Wraith units? Are you playing heavy Aspect Warriors? Or are you playing heavy Jet Bikes? Right? And there'll be a 4th one that is just your general soup. And each of these army rules will give you buffs to that playstyle. And you'll have 3 or 4 stratagems that you can pick and choose to use as an Eldar player throughout the game, right? So you have 3 or 4 army rules to choose from. You get to choose 1 per battle. And you'll have 4 or 5 stratagems to then select and say, okay, these are my stratagems I'm going to use during this battle right here. I think units and factions having 8, 9, 10, you know. We've got the normal stratagems, there are loads of them, and then we've got your faction-only stratagems, and there are loads of them as well. We're talking 10, 15, 20 stratagems, sorry, whacking my microphone, that are available to any player at any one time, most of the time. It doesn't need to be that way. Over-bloated, so I agree with that bit. Anyway, Mayo French says, has 7 things. Okay. Number 1, universal special rules instead of a special rule on every datasheet. Reduces errors, interactions, and complication. That is true. Mithras also does that. It's a role-playing game. And essentially, instead of letting you do like a myriad of different status effects, it says, right, there are a list of 10 status effects that are in the game. If you roll well enough while hitting another character, you know, an enemy, you get to select one of these status effects to give to them. Done. Right? That's just how they do it. And it works really well. So I would say having universal special rules is absolutely imperative. That's why it's in Exile Edition. We do universal special rules. Those of you who are in the know will know the Christmas present I'm giving to you all for free. It'll be coming out around that time. So yeah, we do have universal special rules for that reason, and they're all on one page. There you go. Number 2, core rules for friendly and open play, with templates and blast markers, add-on rules for narrative or competitive play, dice instead of templates, and blast markers to reduce the number of arguments. Yeah, okay. Few or no stratagems and no rerolls. I'm more with few stratagems. No rerolls, I don't agree with. Okay, I think. One second, I'm going to take a quick sip of tea here. That's better. Sorry, I don't want to be slurping down the microphone. So I think one of the issues here is we're in danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. No rerolls means certain characters don't feel special anymore. Certain very powerful characters and units should have access to one reroll of a certain thing. Do you know what I mean? Being able to have rerolls across the board, yeah, that's a bit much and it slows the game down. So I agree with that one. Number 4, asymmetric missions. 2nd edition had things like Take and Hold, Line Breaker, Slay the Warlord. Your opponent's mission did not have to be the same as yours. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. No secondary missions. Number 5. I agree. That's one thing. That's one black and white thing that I do agree with. I think if your mission is well written enough, your central mission is well written enough, you don't need secondary missions. So in Exile Fest, we had each table had its own mission, and it had objectives that are on that mission. So you've got to take and hold 3 of these objectives, and the other objectives that are in the game are Line Breaker, because you're trying to break through the opponent's line, and Slay the Warlord, because you're trying to get rid of the Warlord, because, you know, it's one of those Alpha Strike missions, right? That kind of a thing. So the secondary missions will be baked into the main mission, and they'd both be the same for each player. So there'd only be 3 objectives max on each table, and it worked out really well. Everybody knew exactly what they were doing. There was no complicated, how much of you did you get there? There's none of that, right? All done. Number 6, bring back the psychic phase. Some armies, Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, really need this. I agree. Myself, I would literally bring back the psychic phase. I brought it back in Exile Edition for that very same reason. Number 7, friendly open play should be by the book and remain stable. Competitive play can have regular rebalancing. Yep, those are all Northern Exile thoughts, and I approve. Fred Gerder says, bring back points costs for different war gear, along with the customization for the units. Bring back the feeling of the older editions and a true force organization plan. Love it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. War gear on... Now, I think where we get a bit too crazy is when we start putting war gear on every single Space Marine in the unit, right? No, we want war gear on our main dudes. Our lieutenants, our HQ choices. Those are the dudes you want to put actual war gear on. And, of course, your elites. But elite should be across the board, right? So you can have, you know, one of the guys has a demon hammer, the other guy has a force halberd, the other guy has dual falchions, right? Depending on how you want to arm your unit up, you know, and it shouldn't matter. If I have a whole unit of thunder hammers or demon hammers, that should be incredibly expensive, but also incredibly powerful, right? I've made the choice to do that with my army. That should be reflected in the rules, so I agree. And force organization charts also are in Exile Edition, and I do agree they are imperative to making sure that you have a cool army on the table at all times. No, you can't have 10 units of just infantry and blob me down. We need to have a balanced army. Anyway, Duppy Man says, alternating activations, free digital rules, a better upgrade system, a much better psychic system, new existing factions like Dino Riding Lizard Men. Oh wait, yeah. No, those are Eldar Exodites, and will also be in Exile Edition. So I'm mining a lot of ideas from you lot. I think you've noticed that with Exile Edition. Chaos Heaven says, I'd love for 11th edition to open with a tournament compendium that distinguished casual play from hyper-competitive matched play. Okay, so this is a theme we're seeing develop now in terms of what you guys are saying and what you guys need to happen in 40k going forwards. And I agree. I think the time has come, if they want to go down the esport route, the competitive route, the time has come to divorce those two parts of the game into completely separate pieces. Myself, I would have, like we did in the old 6th edition rulebook, I would have a envelope, like a card envelope, really nice looking one, with 3 books inside of it, right? You got the core rules for the narrative play, you got the core rules for tournament play, and the lore book. Right, 3 books. And that's how I would sell it. And I think a lot of people would have gotten behind that. I hope they do it in 11th edition. I can't see it. I think they will be lazy and just stick with 11th edition being, 10.5 in my opinion, but let's see. I'd like fully digital rules available for free the entire edition. I own 6 armies and will not be purchasing $300 worth of codexes. That's another thing, yeah. Games Workshop leave a lot of money on the table with guys like this. If they just brought out a subscription service where you had every codex available, as soon as it updates, it's on there for $15 a month, people would pay it. People would pay that $14.99 a month. They would make, and that's half a codex, dude. People would pay you half a codex a month to have access to all of the codexes digitally online on their tablets or on their computers or on their phones. Right? Of course, there are other things on there. There's all the content that's on Warhammer Plus. There's all your premium live streams. Yeah, have all that content on there too. But the main thing people will be subscribing for is the free rules. Free rules, you know what I mean? Hey, look me, my dry brush is making an appearance. The free rules, right? They would make a lot more money doing that than they would selling these outdated books that are useless. The codexes are useless. What, you want them for the artwork? It's the same artwork as the past 6 codexes, so why bother? Why bother? Anyway, I'd reintroduce a force organization chart, says Dominic. Remove the Primaris keyword from Marines, restructure the list building to be a bit more complex, include light and heavy elite units as well as light and heavy armor and light and heavy transports. A bit more detail for flavor and list building, keep the general flow of the turn. It is actually okay as well, and I'd keep unit stats structured the same. However, I'd import a few status effects, and I'd eliminate knights as an army completely. They'd be limited to allies, same with Chaos Knights. Would probably aim to balance around 1,000 to 1,500 points, not the biggest fan of 2,000 point games. Okay, lots to unpack there. I think the main thing is removing the Primaris keyword from Space Marines. When you do a big post like this, I will generally pick out one thing to focus on rather than the whole thing. So, removing the keyword, the Primaris keyword from Space Marines, it won't happen, because that means that they are basically saying that, well, 2 things. Number 1, the previous law they wrote about Primaris Marines doesn't really count. That might be one interpretation. Or number 2, all of the Firstborn Marines are now dead, and they're only Primaris Space Marines. That's why they're all just called Space Marines now. Either way, you're opening a tin of worms. A huge can of worms that can't be put on the lid back on again. All of the strictures around the Primaris keyword are mainly gone. Right, you can have Primaris Space Marines and Land Raiders now, as far as I'm aware. Normal Space Marines have 2 wounds too, as far as I'm aware. So I don't really see what it does, removing it. Do any of you see? What would removing the Primaris keyword do for 40k? Let me know in the comment section down below. Nordemp says, smaller games of 1,500 points being the norm, and more balanced would be nice. Also incorporating a I go, you go system in regards to moving and shooting would make the game more fun to play. Well, I think you've misinterpreted what that is. So I go, you go is literally I move all of my things and shoot with my things and attack with my things, then you. You know, that's what that means. Alternating activations is what I think you're talking about, where I move a unit, you move a unit, I move a unit, you move a unit, and we go like that. I shoot, you shoot, I shoot, you shoot. Nothing worse than having your army decimated in front of you than having a wet fish of a turn with whatever you have left. And secondaries can get in the sea. They're just a points lottery that can massively swing an already losing battle into a guaranteed loss. That is true. The thing about secondaries, my main point with secondaries, apart from the bloat that they introduced to the game, my main point on what I don't like about them is they can kind of take the game away from you through no fault of your own, right? Oh, I chose the secondary card that I can't get. Or I chose a secondary card that I can technically get, but it's very, very, very unlikely. I guess I'm just screwed, right? Because I know a few players would say, hey, you can just redraw the card if you want. But it just feels bad. I don't want to redraw the card. It feels like I'm cheating, right? Even if your opponent says you can, it just feels like you're cheating, dude. If a game's rules don't work to the point that you have to ignore the rule, it sucks and it shouldn't be in the game. That's just my opinion. Like, people will say, well, you can just ignore it and just, like, you know, redraw the card. No. Because if the game's rules mean I should just ignore them, they're not very good, are they? That's why I don't want them there. You know? And even then, if you do pick up cards that you can do, the paradigm of the battle can shift to where that card is now useless to you, right? You know, that kind of a thing. So, secondaries can hamstring you through no fault of your own. We all know or have been involved in games, we know somebody who's been involved in them, or you've been involved in them yourself, where you're playing really well, okay? You're decimating your opponent, you're doing really well, but the secondaries say no. Right? And that other guy wins on victory points. You've absolutely annihilated him, you've surrounded him on all sides, you've whittled down his army to next to nothing, you've still got most of your, a quarter of your army left, and he's got 2 models left. Doesn't matter, he wins, because secondary said no to you and yes to him, right? Same thing goes for why I don't really play Warhammer Total War online. It's just so frustrating. You can play it like a fucking tactical genius. You can surround your opponent, cut down all of his men, but it doesn't matter because his demons are immune to morale. He's got some heroes on there that just refuse to run away, and they tank your entire army. The computer says no, right? It feels shit. It feels really bad, and it shouldn't be in the game, you know? Edit with one more rule that annoys me about playing 40k, walking through ruins. Unless there's a clear door or hole in a wall, nothing should be able to walk through a wall as if it's not there. Walking around provides more strategic gameplay and gives more shooty armies a chance to pick off bits before being slammed by a melee squad who walk through 5 walls in 2 turns with their 5-inch move. I agree. That's silly. Ngert says, I would focus on the codexes and their releases. First of all, when a faction gets their codex, oh my god, dude, I said please refrain from massive walls of text. I'll read the first bit, because I did ask you not to do this. So, first of all, when a faction gets their codex and 2 to 4 models for the edition, they should also get a 40 to 90 second long animation meant to introduce people to the faction via narrator and glaze the faction in an action scene where they win. This will make the marine brains actually interested in factions that don't get a cinematic every 2 years, thus improving faction variety and popularity. It would also make cases where a faction gets nothing or a few models sting less, at least they get a cool animation. Okay. And you divide codexes into 3 parts. Okay. Lore and fluffy rules and competitive rules. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, okay. Okay. The animation thing is a bit of a pipe dream. It's expensive. Animation is expensive, so I can't see Games Workshop doing that. But I admire your moxie. I do. Lord Soundwarp says, honestly, I still haven't even started playing the game. I barely got my army ready. As I've only really been in the hobby a year or so, I guess 11th will just be a great start to learning as rules change. Slightly, hopefully. No, we want a big rules change, man. Big one. Because then you can learn like a decent game. Instead of, okay, another wall of text by Liam. Again, I'll paraphrase this. I've been interested in 40k for ages and only ever played 10th edition. It's not the best, I'd say, so there are some changes I'd make. Alright, number 1. Return of the psychic phase and rework of the morale phase. I agree. We've covered the psychic phase, so let's move on to your morale phase. That brings us on to the morale phase. I want to actually feel like your unit's resolve are breaking into terror, so I'd like to make it where if you fail a morale test due to being forced to take one, you roll a die to resolve what happens. Whether you fall back, run away, or stand and fight, but because you broke with a minor debuff. Certain units will have abilities to cancel morale tests and auto pass them, or be able to force them to be made. Alright, cool. Cool. I like that because it's the ebb and flow of a battle, right? It's good. Number 2. I'd want the board size to be a bit longer and wider, perhaps more like 8th edition. The terrain system to be remade to actually be funner, and not be runes and have main core missions, not including secondaries to be more fun. Okay. Yeah. The last thing I'd want is to change full character options and customization, including main characters, and the reintroduction of Legends units back into the main roster. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Raven Baker says, how much is this? Okay. I'm more of a hobbyist than a gamer, so take all of this with a grain of salt. If we are going to be realistic, we shouldn't expect a major overhaul of 11th. Here is what I would think could be reasonably implemented. This is cool, right? So a lot of people are saying, I want this, I want that, and they're like big, massive plans. Raven's not done that. He's gone and said, here's what they could do, right? Number 1, digital rules as a subscription. Roll it into Warhammer Plus. Yes, we've covered that already, and we think it's a good idea. Number 2, create a clear delineation between matched play and narrative play. Yes, we've covered that already. Very easy to do. Match play would be more or less unchanged. With narrative play is where you get the fluffy faction-specific rules and oddball missions. Number 3, for the love of Pete, make the rules easier to read. I have government regulations that are way easier to understand than Games Workshop's rules. Scene government regulations, okay. Number 4, rebalance the game to around the equivalent to 1500 points, okay. Number 5, remove every unit ending in "or" from the Space Marine Codex. They should condense them all down to the basic tactical, devastator, support squads. Also, remove all rules distinctions between Primaris and Firstborn Space Marines. I can think of more than this, but this is enough for now. I think that's what the other guy meant by removing the Primaris keyword. You remove the last distinctions between the two. I agree. I would actually remove them, and if I could, I'd remove the law too. I just want the Mark 10 armor to be an upgrade armor piece to the Marines that are already there. You know? No one really cares that one Space Marine looks a bit smaller than the other. It's fine. We know why that is, right? It's an older Space Marine. It's Firstborn. It's fine. Whatever, right? We don't need a law reason why they're two different sizes. Just give us the new Marines. They look great, right? Give us the new Marines, Mark 10 armor, and let the fans decide whether they want it or not. That's what they should have done, rather than saying, you want this. You know? Where's the money, Lebowski says. Where's the money, Lebowski? An end to the you go, I go format would be good. Yep, covered that. We agree. Sped now says, this is Sam, the Space Wolf Ambassador. Hello, Sam. Personally, I'd like to see all the steps to determine the result of an attack be dialed back. I'd rather it be you roll to hit, you roll to wound, roll to save, and then damage, nothing more. No feel, no pain, no hit modifier, no special wounds, no AP mods. Cover can be an exception, or anything else. This should speed the game and cut number crunching. Yeah, I agree. I mean, attacks making your armor worse was supposed to speed things up, but really AP did that? Do you know what I mean? Like, AP did that. AP 3. Oh, I don't get a save then. Cool. Done. You know? They took something and they replaced it with something more crunchy and said, oh, it's simple now. It's better now. No, it's not. Another sip of tea incoming. Yeah. They said it was simpler now. It's not. It's the same at best. Alright. Crit Magnet says, smaller game sizes, covered that. Detachments being better, internally balanced, while not always following the same design. Okay. Points costed war gear and as little box locking as possible. Box locking is a great term for it. Yeah. You bought this box, that's what they have. You know? It's a real insult when you buy a Grey Knight, strike squad, and you've got all these different options, and it's like Nemesis Force Weapon. Yeah, but I've got Falchions and Demon Hammers and, Halberds. You've got Nemesis Force Weapons. Right. Did it do anything different? No. Cool. That's what lock boxing is, or box locking. Anyway, better customization for units. Each army and detachment gets their own way to additionally gain victory points. Yes, that is in Exile Edition 2. So every single army has an army rule, and attached to that army rule is a mission that army is always on. So for the Exiled Blades, it is winning duels against other characters. The more characters you kill in single combat with your characters, the more victory points you get. That kind of a thing. Free rules, or rules that are worthy to be bought, focus with model releases on filling holes in smaller factions instead of adding more to big factions or adding more half-arsed factions. Psychic Phase returns, but not with its own dedicated Psychic Phase. Okay? Yep. Flying Cell says, however it needs to be done, get the game time down to 2.5 hours max. I would say that's the perfect length of a game, yeah. 2.5 hours max. Right, it is about right for me. Yeah. Any game that is more than that, I think you're losing a lot of players. A lot of players are looking at that going, listen, I've got shit to do that's not here playing this. Like, I've got kids. I can't be here for 4, 5, 6 hours doing this. But you lose the will to live as well. You lose the will, not to live, you use the will for the game. You lose it. You go, well, this ain't really for me anymore, right? I'm just done. My brain's melted. The Dead Gunslinger says, have primary missions to be the full game rule. Then give each army detachment their own secondaries. No more one-size-fits-none secondaries, okay? Alternating activations. Return of the Psychic Phase, but give each army their own unique abilities to play with during it. Keep free war gear, but have points cost per model as opposed to per unit size. Remove true line of sight, and either have base to base or majority of model to majority of model sight. I shouldn't be able to shoot an antenna. Yes. Yes, that is also an Exile Edition, right? You need to see, I think it's like 25% of a model to shoot it. And also, say that there are 10 Space Marines behind a ruin, right? Just because you can see, in 40k as it is now, I can see 3 Space Marines from that 10-man unit, so I'm shooting that unit. No. In Exile Edition, you can shoot the units your model can see. If you can only see 3 Space Marines and the other 7 are behind the ruin, you can only kill 3 Space Marines with your shooting attacks at them. Because it makes sense. Like, why are my bullets phasing through walls? And I'm not even a Grey Knight. Anyway. Make different terrain types matter, more akin to D&D terrain rules. Make battle lines matter more. People need incentive to take their army's bulk troops, yes. Yeah, there is an objective secured. Yeah, give them big buffs. Biffstack says, it would be nice if they brought back the variety of war gear for characters, sergeants and elite squads. Example, Vanguard veterans and Chosen. Also, combi weapons and twin-linked reverts should be awesome, yes. Revan R says, overhaul the combat patrol with each faction having 2 combat patrols, with the first as a learning crutch and the second as Games Workshop to sell miniatures and the designers gone wild with their own gameplay, albeit in limited print of boxes. Okay, they're never doing that, but I like your idea. Hikari says, Going back to army variety, Mordy and Glory recently had a video about how Games Workshop has likely invalidated tens of thousands of models because older players built them with a gun that's no longer supported, or choose a piece of war gear that no longer gives benefits to the player. I want most weapons and war gear that are being in boxes released within the last 2 editions to be supported. I also want every army to have at least one detachment that's a fuck it, we ball style of detachment, where you can just bring units you enjoy and do decently well. I'm not a fan of stuff like Emperor's Children, where if you run demons without doing the demon focused detachment, you're actively harming your list viability. Yes, but this is not just a 10th edition of problem, this has been a problem for years, right? With the optimal list building of certain factions. There are certain units in every single faction's codex that are auto not include, right? If you include this, Scouts being one, Space Marines, right? If you include this, you're actively hampering yourself because there are better options for a similar points cost in your codex that make that unit entirely redundant. Or there are even units that stop you from getting certain army special rules that actively hamstring you as a player, even if you really like that unit. That should get in the sea, should be gone. We shouldn't have that in the game at all. Models are awesome, celebrate your models. That's what I'm saying. Turkey Plague says, make the app more accessible. I shouldn't have to buy the Death Guard Codex just because I want to include one unit of Plague Marines in my Chaos Space Marine force. If I buy a Codex, I should be able to make as many lists for that Codex as I want. I should be able to view my opponent's list through the app, even if I don't have their Codex. Little improvements like attaching characters to units would also be nice. Speaking of codices, if we're going to insist on hard copies, then don't release any of them until at least a year into the edition to ensure that most of the imbalances are ironed out. I don't need another bloody paperweight. Exactly. Yes, codexes should roll out on the app straight away, and that's how you get your rules, right? That's how you get your rules. You could even hard lock it. I know people are going to be mad at me, but you could even hard lock it and say, without this subscription, you can't play. I know you're going to get mad at me, but dude, you know, if they offer everything on Warhammer Plus and they offer every single codex that's automatically updated on the app that you can get on your Android, you can get on your iPad, you can get on your laptop, whatever phone you've got, I'd pay that $14.99 a month. I'd cancel something else that I'm enjoying, right? I'd cancel Xbox Game Pass because I never use it anyway. Same price, and I never really use it. So I'd cancel that and I'd go and get Warhammer Plus. Right? People say as well, what if you can't afford $15 a month? Yeah, but you can afford new models. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can afford new models. So, you know, when you go to work every day, do you buy coffee? It's $5 minimum. Just don't buy coffee 3 times a month. And you know, it just, there are certain price points. You guys know I'm on your side, like absolutely, when it comes to Games Workshop's ridiculous pricing. But there are certain price points that are worth it, where you have to say that would be worth it. $15 a month for every codex, the core rules, all updated all the time, like immediately. All of the Warhammer Plus content, you know, access to developer interviews, specific battle live streams, battle reports. I would also, if you get that $14.99 a month, I would throw in a 6-month White Dwarf subscription as well. But the thing is, you don't get it sent to your house. You can go into a Games Workshop store, have them scan your barcode, and they will give you a physical White Dwarf in the store, right? That means we can get more people into the stores, and once they're there, you may as well pick up some more models, huh? Right? Dude, I should just run this fucking company. I'm not even, you know, I'd make them so much money. Because I know how you all think. And I know how to squeeze you. Don't clip that, please. I'm really afraid of people who use me to fall asleep will be like just waking up and they can just hear me saying, I know how to squeeze you. Whoops. Frogjar says, do indexes again so the base rules are free for people to download. Index will include army rules. I personally dislike detachment and detachment rules, so I would scrap them in favour of better army building rules. I would also overhaul the base rules to alternating activations, so I'm not waiting an hour to take my turn. All reasonable takes. Alternating activations, says Serbin, whatever that says. Brian Cole Morgan says, through playtesting to reduce thorough playtesting to reduce ambiguity in the rules, so more time is spent playing and less time is spent arguing rules minutiae. Yes. Captain Arcturus says, some armies need a psychic phase like the Eldar and Grey Knights, otherwise you end up with factions that don't play how they should, and in armies that have less psychers, you end up with crap models like librarians. Yep. Mitchell Smith says, cheaper models priced similarly to Wargame Atlantic prices. Like that will ever happen. Yeah. Dark Apostle Croesus says, I'd love to see more of the hobby come back into the game. Points cost onto models so units can be equipped how they used to be and not have mandatory loadouts. Conversion coming back and being a thing. I thought that would come up a lot more. I thought conversions would come up a lot more. Conversions are the A1 thing that should be encouraged and pushed. You know, absolutely. But I think putting points to war gear kind of encourages that already. So I guess people are like leaning towards that. Conversion coming back and being a thing. Make that hero your own again. Orcs lost a lot of flavour with the monopose. You can only take this as one of your characters, that kind of thing. I would like to see a return to 6th to 7th edition rules without the formations. Personally, I think they were the best rule set Games Workshop ever did. Maybe a bit of a hot take, but I think some armies need to disappear again. Genestealer Cults, Death Watch and Votan, personally, should never have come back, but there we are. Anything with less than a dozen units, really. They are great in the lore, but the rules and why they are an army doesn't really make sense to me. Okay. Yeah. I think you can solve these by keeping them in the game as an option for bigger armies. So Genestealer Cults are an option for Tyranids, Death Watch are an option for Inquisition, Votan are an option for Imperial Guard. You know what I mean? You get rid of all the AI stuff, and you make the Leagues of Votan just like dudes who are a part of the Imperium, you know, who are just around, that kind of thing. And it could work that way. Iron Within says, how big is this? Okay. I think the game has become far too simple for the purpose of being beginner friendly. Okay. And has been so condensed and simplified that it is more of a board game than a war game. What I would do to change it is to bring back its strategic aspects, not, well, this guy is meta, so I'm going to play him. I mean building a list with certain requirements and roles to fill similar to the Horus Heresy, which allows for a lot more room for people to use their mind and methods to what they need to do. As currently, you can essentially fudge entire games by bringing a list of only the most meta units, okay? A Weird says, revolutionise list building for the best edition of Warhammer ever by adding in unit upgrades and wargear customization and variable sized units as well. Sadly, what I think will actually happen is copying Horus Heresy 3.0 and being left with 40k that only has 4 turns per game. So many additions of a loss. Reverend Demo says, bring back the colour and fluff. Actually give a damn about the lore and overarching plot and make the setting live and breathe the way it did back in 7th and 3rd edition. Give every faction a book of inspiration, knowledge and specific or special rules, like the old Realm of Chaos books or WA, da Orcs, and take the power the setting has off of life support and make it alive again. As it stands now, the only colour is on the paint racks in the stores. It's time 40k stopped being like the Emperor of Man, mostly dead and going nowhere. Yeah, I agree. I think this is what I think codexes should have been, or should be now. Okay, you should have codexes that are essentially collector's items. They are interviews from the developers, behind the scenes stuff, massive reams of lore and inspiration for your armies. There'll be extended rules on how to build your own chapter master or orc war boss or whatever, right? That kind of a thing. How to do your own heraldry, how to do so it fits in with the lore. That should be either a part of the codex or a collector's book all of its own, right? All of its own. I would bring out the codexes for on the app. All the rules are on the app, but these actual tomes are big, thick, hardcover books about your faction, right? Essentially a love letter to that faction by the guys who made the faction. And bring back Rick Priestley, dude. Bring back older dudes to comment on what's changed. What works, what doesn't, right? In that book. It'd be so interesting. It'd be so interesting. Those would fly off the shelves, dude. I'd buy one for every faction. I would. In every edition. That's worth 30 quid. That book there is worth 30 quid. Your useless rules that are out of date, like when the book comes out, your lore that isn't lore because you keep changing it, or just getting it wrong even in the codex, and telling us it doesn't even matter because of unreliable narrators, you fucking cowards, right? That's of no use to me. That's not worth 30 quid. What I just described earlier, that's worth 30 quid of my English money. Thank you very much. Jimbox says, honestly, I'd simplify the rules so you can get more games in and have more fun and deal with neckbeards and endless measurements less. Okay. Kyle says, stop with the re-rolls for fuck's sake. Kaya says, all the female space marines, you little troll, and see what you're doing there. Stephen Marsh says, easy, and I need you to listen closely, North. I just make it where I actually won a game. Now, I don't know. I'm too new. I'd love to see some change, but I'm too fresh to say exactly what. Okay? And Liam says, oh my god, another one of these. Finish off. Did you do one before, Liam, that was like this? You did. Okay. I will paraphrase. I've been more interested in 40k for ages and only ever played 10th edition. It's not the best, I'd say, so here are some changes I'd make. Number 1, return the psychic phase and rework the morale. Okay, you've already put this on. Okay, this is one from earlier. Okay. I'd want the board size to be a bit longer. Okay, yeah, that's fine. You put this on twice, that's fine. So those are your thoughts on 11th edition. Do you guys think, watching the video, do you think we're onto something here? Did you think that the community is talking absolute nonsense? Let me know in the comment section down below. I love you all long time. I will speak to you tomorrow for some more hobby nightmares. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you very, very soon. All right? Have a good one. Bye now.